When my dad said, "Traditions are for parents. You can skip this year," I didn't argue. He smiled when he said it, half joking, half serious. We were sitting in the kitchen, steam rising from his tea, the same place we'd shared countless holiday mornings together. But that year, things were off. It had been a hard few months. Mom had passed away earlier that spring, and no one in the family really knew how to exist without her. Every tradition we had, her cooking, her singing while decorating, even her stubborn insistence on wrapping gifts perfectly, felt impossible to repeat. So when Dad told me to skip the family gathering, I took it as his way of saying, "I can't do this either." I told him I understood. I'd stay home, get some rest, maybe read, maybe think. He nodded quietly, not looking me in the eye. That was the last real conversation we had before the holidays began. The day of the family gathering came, and the house was quiet, too quiet. I made coffee, sat by the window, and tried to convince myself I didn't miss it, the noise, the laughter, the chaos of cousins running around. I told myself Dad was with the relatives, holding up as best as he could. But something in my chest felt wrong. The silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt empty. I texted Dad, "Everything okay over there?" No reply. An hour passed. Then 2. I tried again, called twice, but it went straight to voicemail. By evening, unease turned into panic. He never ignored my calls. Never. I grabbed my coat, keys in hand, and drove toward the old family home. The road was dark, dusted with snow, and every turn made my chest tighten. Because deep down, I knew that when he told me to skip this year, he hadn't meant tradition. He'd meant something else entirely. The driveway was covered in a thin layer of snow when I pulled up. Dad's old sedan sat there, dusted white, untouched. The porch light was on. He always left it on for guests, even when he wasn't expecting anyone. My stomach knotted. I pushed open the front door. It wasn't locked. The smell hit me first, his aftershave, the faint scent of incense he burned every evening. And something else, something cold and heavy. "Dad." I called out. Silence. The living room looked untouched, except for one thing. The photo albums were spread out across the coffee table, the way Mom used to leave them when she wanted to reminisce. There was her handwriting on sticky notes marking pages. Our first Diwali, Dad's 50th, summer trip. And in the center of it all sat a half-empty cup of tea, still warm. I moved toward his study. The door was slightly open, light spilling out. Inside, Dad sat in his chair, facing the old family altar where Mom's photo stood framed with fresh flowers. His hands rested on his lap, calm. His eyes were closed. For a moment, I thought he was asleep. I stepped closer, said softly, "Dad?" He didn't move. That's when I saw the small folded note on the table beside him, my name written in his careful, shaking handwriting. My heart stopped. I reached for it with trembling fingers and read, "You always understood your mother better than anyone. She loved traditions because they kept us close. But without her, those traditions became walls. I told you to skip this year because I didn't want you trapped inside her absence like I am. I wanted you to start living again, but I can't." My knees went weak. I dropped the note. The next few minutes blurred, calling for help, shaking his shoulder, begging for a response that would never come. By the time the paramedics arrived, everything was still. He was gone, peacefully, like he had simply followed her voice into another room. After the chaos faded, I sat alone in that house, surrounded by memories that now felt like ghosts. The neighbors had come, the relatives too, whispers, tears, questions. But I barely heard them. All I could think of was that line, "Traditions are for parents. You can skip this year." He wasn't dismissing me. He was letting me go, protecting me from the weight he knew he couldn't carry anymore. Over the next days, I handled the rituals, cremation, condolences, paperwork, moving like a machine. But the night before we spread his ashes, I went back to the house one last time. The photo albums were still there. I opened one, our first family festival together. Mom was laughing, Dad standing awkwardly beside her, younger, happier. I could almost hear her teasing him for never smiling in pictures. And for the first time in months, I didn't cry. I just sat there quietly and whispered, "You were right, Dad. Traditions aren't about duty. They're about love. And love doesn't die." When dawn came, I packed the albums, locked the door, and walked away. That year, I didn't celebrate the holiday, but I kept a new tradition, lighting a candle for both of them. Not out of grief, out of gratitude. If this story touched you, take a moment to call the ones you love. Don't wait for the next holiday or the perfect time. Just reach out. Because sometimes one message, one visit, one "I love you" can change everything. Share this story if you felt it too. A year passed before I could walk into that house again. The locks had rusted a little, the garden was overgrown, but the air still smelled faintly of my parents, old books, incense, and tea. I didn't come back for the memories. I came back because I finally understood what Dad was trying to tell me in that note. He wasn't asking me to forget the past. He was giving me permission to build something new. The holidays came around again, and for the first time, I didn't avoid them. I invited my cousins, a few old friends, and even the neighbors who had brought food the night everything happened. There were no fancy decorations, no rituals, no long prayers, just people, warmth, and laughter. At some point during dinner, one of the kids asked why I'd lit 2 small candles by the window. I smiled and said, "It's a tradition my parents started. They just didn't know it yet." The room went quiet for a moment. Then someone began talking about their own parents, their own stories of loss and forgiveness. The night turned into something gentle, a reminder that love doesn't stay trapped in photos or festivals. It lives on in the way we keep caring. Later, when everyone left, I sat alone with the candles still flickering. I took out the last photo of Dad and Mom together, their smiles small but real, and placed it beside the flames. I kept my promise. I whispered, "I didn't let your traditions become walls." The house felt different that night. Not haunted, not hollow, alive again. I could almost imagine them sitting nearby, sipping tea, teasing each other softly like they used to. I realized then that skipping traditions didn't mean breaking them. It meant letting them evolve, the way people do. I blew out one candle and let the other burn down on its own. That's how I've lived ever since, not trapped by the past, but guided by it, not following the same rituals, but carrying the same love. Because Dad was right, traditions aren't for parents or children. They're for remembering where you came from and still finding the courage to move forward.